I used to think I was good at hiding fear. You learn to fake calm when you're raising a child alone. But that night, it wasn't fear I was hiding. It was desperation. It had been 3 days since rent was due. The landlord had already left one of those notes on the door. Red letters, folded with fake politeness. I didn't have the money. I didn't even have gas in the car. My son Noah was asleep on the couch, small arms wrapped around that tattered blue dinosaur he carried everywhere. I remember sitting there, watching him breathe and thinking, I'll find a way. I always do. Turns out I didn't. He disappeared the next afternoon. It wasn't like in the movies. No screaming, no dramatic chase. I turned around for 1 second at the corner store, and he was gone. The world just went silent. 1 second, I was comparing the price of milk, and the next, I couldn't hear my own heartbeat. I ran outside, calling his name. No one had seen him. I remember the way the air burned in my throat when I screamed. People stared but didn't help. They just kept walking. By the time I found his shoe in the parking lot, I couldn't breathe. It was the kind of terror that makes you forget language. I called the police, of course. They promised to look into it. But every second felt like a blade pressed against my skin. I went door to door through the whole block, knocking until my hands bled. No one had seen a little boy with curly hair and a blue shirt, until one man did. He was a security guard outside a black steel gate, too fancy for our part of town. He didn't even look at me when I begged him to open it. He just said, "A black car came through an hour ago. There was a kid in the back seat, crying." He pointed toward the mansion behind the gate. That's how I ended up there, on his doorstep. At night, I don't remember the drive. I just remember my knuckles bleeding from pounding on the door, my voice cracking as I shouted Noah's name. And then the door opened. He stood there, tall, cold, the kind of presence that fills every inch of space. He looked down at me like he was trying to decide whether I was trouble or trash. His shirt, white, sleeves rolled to his forearms, was half unbuttoned, and his expression didn't move when I tried to speak. "My son," I gasped. "Please, someone took him. They brought him here. I just want my boy." He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the dark, like he was used to danger being just out of sight. Then he said in a low voice that almost didn't sound real, "Describe him," I told him. Every word shook. He didn't speak again. He just turned, walked into the house, and left me standing there. For 30 seconds, I thought I'd imagined it all. Then I heard a door open inside, and a small voice, Noah's voice, called, "Mommy?" I broke. I don't remember crossing the threshold. I just remember dropping to my knees and holding him so tight he squealed. His face was dirty, his eyes red from crying. The man stood in the hallway behind us, arms folded, watching. He said he knocked on my door. "What?" "Your boy. He walked here, alone. Said his mom told him to find the house with the lion gate. I never..." My words stumbled over themselves. "I never told him." He looked at me like he already knew I was lying, or like he didn't care whether I was. "I sent someone to find where he came from," he said. There was no one. No address, no neighbors who knew you, because we'd moved too many times, because I'd been hiding. He took a step closer. "You running from something, sweetheart?" That word, it sounded wrong coming from him. Too intimate, too heavy. "I just want to take him and leave," I said, holding Noah close. He crouched down, eyes level with my son. "You know who I am, little man?" Noah shook his head. "Good," he said softly, then stood again, turning that same gaze on me. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't mean to. He smiled a little, but it wasn't kindness. No one ever does. I tried to walk past him, but his hand shot out, fingers closing around my wrist. Not rough, but final. "Someone will come looking for you now," he said. "That's how this works. You don't get to knock on my door and disappear." I didn't knock. He did. I snapped, heart pounding. "He's a child, which is why you're both staying. For now." I remember the way he said it, so calm, like he was making a business decision. And maybe he was. I wanted to scream, but Noah clung to me, whispering, "Mommy, don't make him mad." That was the moment I realized he wasn't just dangerous. He was feared. Even by my child, he let us inside. I should have run. I should have fought. But I was exhausted, and Noah needed food, warmth, safety. Every survival instinct I had screamed to wait. The mansion was silent except for the ticking of a clock somewhere. He motioned to a woman at the end of the hall, gray dress, no expression, and said, "Get them cleaned up." I started to protest, but he cut me off. "You're not in danger here, unless you make yourself a problem." That line lived in my head for days. Noah fell asleep that night in a bed bigger than our old apartment. I sat by the window, staring out at the black gates, wondering what kind of man lived behind them. Wondering why my son had somehow found him. He came to see me just after midnight. No knock. He just appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. The light caught his eyes, gray, unreadable. "You're shaking," he said. I didn't answer. He crossed the room, slow, deliberate. "You think I took him, don't you?" I hesitated. "Did you?" He smiled faintly. "If I had, you wouldn't be sitting here asking. So what do you want from us?" "Nothing," he said. Then after a pause, "Not yet." There was something about the way he said it that made my stomach twist. Like the yet wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He studied me for a moment, his voice dropping low. "You should rest. You look like you've been running your whole life." I almost told him he wasn't wrong, but then he looked toward the bed where Noah slept, and his expression softened for just a second, like something in him remembered being human once. He turned to leave, but before he did, he said, "If anyone asks, you were never here." And then he was gone. I lay awake until dawn, trying to understand how the world had flipped overnight, how my son's small knock had opened a door to a life I didn't want, but couldn't escape. By morning, the staff treated us like we belonged there. Breakfast appeared. Clothes were left folded on a chair. Noah laughed for the first time in days, and I kept waiting for the moment he'd tell us to go. It never came. Days turned into a week. He barely spoke to me. But when he did, it was with that strange mixture of authority and quiet curiosity. Like I was a puzzle he hadn't decided whether to solve or destroy. Then, on the 7th night, I made a mistake. I tried to leave. I waited until the house was silent, took Noah's hand, and slipped through the garden toward the gate. The cold air burned my lungs. We were maybe 10 steps from freedom when headlights flared in the dark. A black car blocked the exit. He got out, no shirt this time, just black slacks, a holstered gun, and that same unreadable face. Going somewhere? His voice was calm. Too calm. My heart thrashed in my chest. "Please, we don't belong here." He walked closer, slow enough to make me shake. Then he knelt in front of Noah again, hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. "You scared your mother," he said softly. "Don't do that again." Then he looked up at me. "You scared me." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. He straightened. "I said you're not leaving again." And that's when it hit me. Not just the fear, but the truth. He wasn't keeping us for protection. He wasn't doing this out of pity or power. He'd already decided we belonged to him. And I hated how a part of me, deep down, didn't want to run anymore. People talk about cages like they're built from iron. The truth is, mine was made of comfort. Soft sheets, quiet halls, 3 meals a day served with silver cutlery, my son laughing again, and the man whose house it was, the man whose name no one said out loud, watched from the edges of it all, like a shadow that decided to stay. His name was Roman. I learned that not from him, but from the way people said it when they thought I couldn't hear. Always quiet, always careful. Like the name itself could bring trouble. He didn't talk much those first weeks. He just appeared, in the hallways, on the terrace, sometimes in the doorway while I read to Noah at night. He never interrupted, just listened, then disappeared again like smoke. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that he was just keeping an eye on us, but I felt it, the way he changed the air when he entered a room, the way the staff froze, the way my pulse betrayed me every single time. One night, I found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, drinking something dark and expensive. His shirt was unbuttoned again. He never seemed to finish buttoning it, and there was a small scar at the base of his throat. He looked up, half smiling. Couldn't sleep? I shook my head. You? Never do. He nodded toward the empty stool beside him. Sit, I should have said no. But something about his tone. It wasn't an order this time. It was almost human, so I sat. He poured me a glass. I didn't drink. You're not afraid of me anymore, he said. I forced a laugh. That's generous of you to assume. He watched me too closely, like he was reading something beneath my skin. You should be. I'm not the kind of man you pray for. I'm the one people pray about. There was no arrogance in his voice. Just truth. Then why let us stay? I asked. He looked down, swirling the drink. Because your boy reminds me of something I lost. What did you lose? He didn't answer. His jaw tightened, and the silence filled the room until I couldn't breathe. When I finally stood to leave, he said quietly, You shouldn't try to run again. Not because I'd stop you, but because out there, you wouldn't make it. Someone's already looking for you. I turned, startled. What do you mean? He met my eyes steady. A man came to the gate 3 days ago, asked if a woman with a child had been seen in the area, said he was your husband. My blood went cold. He's not, I whispered. He's not my husband. Roman's voice dropped lower. Then who is he? Someone I ran from. Something in him shifted then, not pity, but recognition. Like we both understood what it meant to be haunted by someone who didn't deserve to live in our memory. He nodded once. You're safe here. But safety in his house felt like standing too close to a storm. You could smell the danger before you saw it. Days passed. He started talking more. Sometimes to me, sometimes to Noah. My son adored him. Of course he did. Roman had that quiet authority that children instinctively trusted. He'd let Noah feed the dogs, walk beside him in the garden, listen while he talked about cars and stars and old stories that sounded half like fairy tales and half like warnings. And me, I pretended not to watch, but I did. Every time. One afternoon, I found myself standing at the balcony above his office. The door below was half open, and his voice drifted up, low, controlled, dangerous. She's off limits, he was saying. The woman and the boy. No one touches them. A second voice responded, nervous. Boss, you can't just take in strays. People talk. I don't care what people say. You care when they start asking why. A pause. Then Roman's tone dropped to something colder. Anyone who asks why doesn't live long enough to hear the answer. Something in me broke at that line. Not from fear, but from the way he said it, like it cost him something to mean it. Later that night, I saw him again. He didn't know I'd overheard. He just appeared in the hallway, tie undone, eyes tired. Why do you do that? I asked before I could stop myself. He raised an eyebrow. Do what? Protect people you don't even know. He studied me for a long time, then said, Maybe I'm not protecting you. Then what are you doing? His answer came after a long silence, trying to forget I know how to destroy. The way he said it, so raw, so calm, made my chest ache. That was the night he touched me for the first time. Nothing sinful, nothing planned. He brushed a strand of hair from my face and whispered, Go to sleep, little one. The nickname startled me. No one had ever called me that before. It was tender in a way I didn't expect. I hated that my heart reacted. Over the next weeks, everything blurred into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mornings with Noah, quiet dinners. Roman appearing and disappearing like a ghost who couldn't decide if he wanted to haunt or heal. Until the night the phone rang. It was past midnight. I was half asleep when I heard shouting downstairs. I crept into the hall and saw Roman standing in the foyer, holding the phone to his ear. Face stone. Who told you she was here? His voice was ice. You're making a mistake coming near my house. I knew before he hung up who it was. My past had found me. He turned, saw me on the stairs, and said quietly, Pack a bag. Now. I froze. What's happening? He knows where you are. Roman, do not argue with me. I'd seen him angry before, but never like this. His calm was gone. He was all instinct and control and rage that didn't belong in the human body. I packed whatever I could grab. Noah clung to my leg, confused. Roman waited by the door, gun holstered at his side, eyes scanning the darkness. We drove for hours. He didn't speak. The city disappeared behind us, replaced by silence and trees and the hum of the tires. When we finally stopped, it was at a cabin tucked deep in the woods. He got out first, checked the perimeter, then opened my door. "You'll stay here until I handle it." "Handle what?" "The man looking for you." "Roman, you can't." He stepped closer, voice low. "You think I'm going to let someone hurt you after you walked into my house like you belonged there?" The way he said it made me shiver. He took Noah inside, showed him the small bedroom, made sure the windows locked. Then he turned to me. "I'll be back by morning." "Roman, don't do this." He looked at me for a long moment, something heavy behind his eyes. "If I don't, he'll never stop." He started to walk away. I reached for his hand before I realized I had. He froze, looked down at our joined fingers and said, "Don't wait up." Then he was gone. Hours passed. The silence was unbearable. Every creak of the cabin made me think I'd hear a gunshot outside. When the door finally opened near dawn, I ran to him before I could stop myself. His shirt was torn, his knuckles bleeding, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. He didn't speak for a long time, just sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, breathing like the air hurt him. "What did you do?" I whispered. He looked up, jaw clenched. "It's over." I knew what that meant. Tears burned my eyes. "Roman, you didn't have to—" He cut me off. I did. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The world outside was gray with dawn. He stared at the floor like he could still see the blood there. Finally, he said, "You're safe now, but you don't get to leave." I felt the words before I understood them. "What do you mean?" He looked at me then, not angry, not cold, just lost. "You think I can let you go after what I've done for you? After what I've risked?" "Roman," his voice cracked just once. "You and that boy walked into my house like a ghost of everything I tried to bury. I can't let you disappear again." I didn't know whether to cry or scream, because part of me wanted to run, and part of me didn't. He stood, stepped close enough for me to feel his breath. "You don't belong to him anymore," he said. "You belong here," my pulse stuttered. "And what are we to you?" His answer came so soft I almost missed it. "What's left of me?" That was the first time he kissed me. Not tenderly. Hungry, desperate, like he was drowning and I was the last air in his lungs. I should have pushed him away. I didn't. When he finally pulled back, he whispered against my skin, "I'm not a good man, little one, but I'll be damned if I ever let anyone take you again." And in that moment, I realized I'd fallen for a man who could kill without blinking, and love like it was the only thing keeping him alive. I fell asleep against him as the sun rose. But when I woke, he was gone. A note sat on the table. 4 words, written in his steady hand. "If I don't come back, run." When you've lived your whole life in fear, peace feels like a trick. Like someone's pulling a sheet over your eyes just to see if you'll flinch. The morning I woke up and Roman wasn't there, I didn't panic right away. I just stared at the empty space beside me, at the indentation on the pillow where his head had been, and waited for the sound of his footsteps. It didn't come. Hours passed. Then days, no message. No car pulling up the dirt road. Just the slow drip of silence that stretched until it cracked something inside me. I didn't cry. Not at first. I took care of Noah, fed him, read to him, kept him busy, pretended the world hadn't changed overnight. But when he fell asleep each night, I sat by the window and whispered his name like a prayer I didn't believe in anymore. Roman. Every time I said it, the walls seemed to answer with nothing. Then the news came, a small headline in a local paper. "Violence erupts in city's South District. Sources say crime family power shift underway." I knew. I didn't need names. The photo showed a building I recognized, the old warehouse Roman used as a front. Smoke curling up into the sky like the world was burning itself clean. I folded the paper before Noah could see it, and locked myself in the bathroom to throw up. He'd gone back to that life. To the men who only respected blood and revenge. He'd gone back for me. I told myself he was dead, because that was easier than hoping. We stayed in that cabin for 3 months. I learned how to fix leaks, how to shoot a gun he'd left in the drawer, how to make pancakes without crying. Noah grew taller, started asking fewer questions. Children know how to adapt. Adults pretend they do. And then, one morning, I woke up and felt different. Not healed, just heavier in the right way. Grounded. I packed our things and told Noah, "We're going home." He frowned. "Where's home, Mommy?" I didn't know how to answer. We went back to the city. The mansion was gone. Burned, boarded up, forgotten like it had never existed. I stood outside the blackened gate where it all began and felt the ghost of that night when my son knocked and everything changed. A woman sweeping the sidewalk looked up at me. "You looking for someone, sweetheart?" I almost laughed. Not anymore. We found a small apartment near the river. I got a job at a bookstore. Quiet. Predictable. The kind of place where no one asked about your past because everyone had something to hide. Life settled into a rhythm. I stopped jumping at every knock. I stopped expecting his voice behind me. I stopped, almost missing him, until the letter came. No return address. Just my name, written in a handwriting I could recognize in the dark. Inside, a single sheet. "Heard you found peace. Keep it." No signature. No explanation. I sat there staring at the words, feeling the old ache crawl up from somewhere deep. Relief. Anger. Love. It all mixed together until it felt like drowning again. For weeks, I kept the letter in a drawer. Some nights I'd take it out and trace the ink, wondering where he was. If he still wore that white shirt with the undone buttons. If he still slept with one hand near a gun. And then, just as quietly as he disappeared, he came back. It was raining the night I saw him again. I was closing the shop when the bell above the door rang. I didn't look up right away. I was too busy locking the register. But I felt it. The way the air changed, the way my body recognized his presence before my mind did. "Still working late," he said softly. My hands froze. When I turned, he was standing there. Same gray eyes, same quiet authority, only this time he looked tired. Older. Like every fight he'd ever been in had finally caught up to him. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "You're supposed to be dead." He almost smiled. I was. For a while. I crossed my arms, more to hold myself together than to fight. "Why are you here?" He stepped closer, rain still dripping from his hair. "To make sure you're safe, and to tell you I'm done." "Done with what?" "Everything." His voice cracked. "The business. The blood. The ghosts." I walked away. I stared at him, trying to believe it. You can't just walk away from that world. He gave a faint shrug. "I can if everyone who could stop me is gone." Something about the calm way he said it made my stomach turn. He looked around the shop, the books, the quiet. "You built something real," he said. "I didn't think you would." "I didn't have a choice." He nodded, eyes softening. "You never did. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sound of the rain filled the silence like it was part of the conversation. Then he said, "How's the boy?" "Growing, smarter than me. He remembers you." Roman's mouth twitched. "Yeah?" "He still talks about the time you let him feed the dogs. He says you didn't smile much, but when you did, it looked like the sun." He turned his head, like he couldn't bear to hear it. "I shouldn't have let you stay. Either of you. And yet you did." He looked at me then, and I saw it. The same battle I'd been fighting for years. Love against guilt. Hope against memory. "I wanted to keep you safe," he said. "But I only made you run harder." "You saved us," I whispered. "That matters." He shook his head. "I don't get to be the hero." "No," I said. "But you were the reason we survived." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. "For Noah." Inside was a silver coin, old, worn, engraved with a lion. "He used to stare at the gate," Roman said quietly. "Said it looked like the lion was protecting us." "Tell him he was right." I held the coin in my palm. It was warm from his touch. Then, before I could stop myself, I asked, "Are you staying?" He froze. "I don't mean here," I said quickly. "I just mean in this world, in mine." He studied me, and for the first time I saw fear in him. Not of death, not of enemies, of hope. "I don't know how to be normal," he said. "I don't know how to live without the noise." "Then don't try," I said. "Just be," he exhaled, slow and uncertain. "You still believe in things that break you." "I believe in what's left after they do." He looked at me for a long time, then stepped forward and touched my face like he wasn't sure I was real. His thumb traced the edge of my jaw, gentle, reverent. "I missed you," he said. I didn't realize I was crying until he brushed the tears away. "I waited," I whispered. "Every night. I thought you were gone. I was gone. I just didn't know how to find my way back." He kissed me then. Nothing like before. No hunger, no war, just quiet, trembling peace. When he pulled away, he said, "I'm not staying long. I have to keep moving." I nodded. "I know. But I needed to see you once more, to know you made it out alive." "I did," I said softly. "We both did." He smiled faintly like he didn't quite believe he deserved to. "You did more than that. You built a life." He turned to leave, and for a moment I thought I'd let him go, but something in me rebelled against that kind of silence again. "Roman," I said. He paused in the doorway. "You don't have to disappear to protect me anymore." He didn't answer. He just looked back once, eyes steady, and said, "I'll find my way home when I'm worthy of it." Then he was gone. Years passed. Noah grew up. He stopped carrying the dinosaur, started asking about the man who saved us. Sometimes I told him stories. Sometimes I didn't. But he always carried that silver coin, rubbing his thumb over the lion when he was scared. As for me, I learned to live without looking over my shoulder. I learned that love isn't always gentle. It's sometimes the thing that ruins you before it saves you. And every now and then, I still feel him. In the rain, in the quiet, in the way the air shifts before dawn, like someone's watching from the edge of the world. Sometimes, when I lock the shop late at night, I glance toward the door, half expecting him to be there again. He never is, but I've stopped needing him to be. Because love doesn't always end with staying. Sometimes it ends with surviving. I don't know where he is now. Maybe he's somewhere quiet, learning what peace feels like. Maybe he's finally free. All I know is this. The man who once lived in a house of shadows taught me how to live in the light, and somehow, after everything, we found our way home. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. For every broken heart that found its way back to love, this one was for you. If it stayed with you even a little, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Wherever you're listening from, hold on to the people who come back for you. You ever try to hold your life together with one trembling hand while the other shields your kid from the world? That was me the day everything snapped. I was halfway through convincing the landlord to give me another week. Again, when I realized it was too quiet. The kind of quiet that means trouble. "Caleb?" I called out, phone still pressed between my shoulder and cheek. No answer. "Caleb!" The front door was open. I dropped the phone, heart pounding, because my 7-year-old doesn't do quiet. He hums while brushing his teeth, sings while tying his shoes, talks to his stuffed bear like it's a podcast audience. But that morning, the silence hit like a siren. I ran outside and saw him halfway down the street, brown curls bouncing, little backpack slung over one shoulder, clutching a cardboard box. His cookie fundraiser box. I swear my legs forgot how to move until I saw where he was headed. The black gates. The house. That damn mansion at the end of the cul-de-sac, big enough to have its own gravity. Nobody in the neighborhood ever said who lived there, but everyone knew what he was. Money like that doesn't come from honest work. The cars were too sleek, the men outside too alert, and once, a scream had cut through the night from behind those gates, and no one called the cops. Not because we didn't care, because we didn't dare, and my kid was walking straight to his door. By the time I caught up, he was already pressing the doorbell, shoes squeaking on the marble steps. "Caleb," I hissed, grabbing his shoulder. "We don't knock on this house. Mom, he might want to buy cookies." His smile was all sunshine and delusion. The door opened. The man standing there looked like danger dressed in elegance. Tall, composed. Black dress shirt, the top button undone, sleeves rolled up to reveal veins and a watch that cost more than my car. His eyes weren't the kind that scanned, they assessed. He looked at me first. Not surprised, just curious, then at Caleb, who was now proudly holding up the cookie box like an offering. "Good morning," the man said. His voice was calm, smooth, but carried weight, like every word cost something. "What do we have here?" "Cookies," Caleb grinned. "I'm selling them for school." A ghost of amusement flickered across the man's face. "And what's your name, little salesman?" "Caleb. Caleb." He repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing it for later. Then his gaze slid back to me. "You must be his mother." Yeah," I said, trying to stand a little straighter. He nodded once. "How much for the box?" "It's, $5. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a money clip. Thick, the kind that doesn't bend. He peeled off a few bills and handed them to my son. Not a few, a lot. Caleb's eyes widened. "That's too much." "Keep it," the man said. "I'll take them all." "All?" Caleb blinked. "There's 12 boxes." I said all. The words weren't loud, but they landed heavy. Then he turned to me. "You'll deliver the rest tomorrow." "I what?" "You heard me." His tone didn't rise, but my pulse did. "Consider it interest. Interest on what?" He smiled faintly. "On the boy's courage." Caleb giggled, thrilled by his own success. But I stood there, frozen. Something in the man's eyes told me this wasn't charity. It was a claim. He stepped back inside, the door closing with a soft click that felt louder than a gunshot. That night, I counted the money. $500 for cookies that cost $60. I didn't sleep. The words interest on the boy's courage looped through my head until they became something else. Interest on you. 2 days passed. Every time I walked to the window, there was a car across the street. Same black sedan. Tinted windows. It didn't move. Didn't idle. It just waited. On the third night, someone knocked on my door. Not hard. Just 3 measured taps. I looked through the peephole. No one. Just a small envelope taped to the door. I opened it. Inside was a folded card with handwriting that looked like it. Belonged to someone who didn't know the meaning of mistakes. You owe me a conversation. Tonight. 9 p.m. Don't make me send someone to collect you. No signature. None needed. My first thought was, don't go. My second thought was Caleb. If this man could find me, he could find him. By 8:45, I was outside. The mansion gates opened before I even touched them. A man in a suit nodded toward the door, wordless. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, chandeliers, the faint scent of cigars and money. And him, Vincent DeLuca, sitting in an armchair like it was a throne. You came. I tried to sound braver than I felt. I didn't think I had a choice. There's always a choice. He motioned to the seat across from him. Though not always a good one. I stayed standing. What do you want? He tilted his head slightly. You took my money. My son sold you cookies, and I bought them. Overpaid, actually. That creates a debt. That's not how this works. He smirked. In my world, it is. His world. The words carried everything I'd been trying not to acknowledge. This wasn't a neighbor. This was a man people whispered about. The one whose money ran through half the city, and whose enemies tended not to live long enough to complain. I took a shaky breath. Then what do you want from me? He looked at me like the answer was already obvious. You. My pulse stopped. He set down his glass and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Relax, sweetheart. I'm not a monster. That's debatable. His eyes darkened, amused. You've got a mouth on you. I've got a kid depending on me. I don't have time for your games. Good, he said, because I don't play. We stared at each other in a silence that burned. Then he stood and walked closer. The space between us felt like the edge of a cliff. "You've been struggling," he said quietly. "Rent late, job on hold, no support." My throat tightened. "You've been checking on me." He didn't deny it. "I make it a point to know the people who wander into my life." "I didn't wander. My son brought you to my door." "Fate has strange timing," I flinched. "Don't talk like you know me." "I don't, but I intend to." He was too close now. I could smell him, something dark, clean, expensive. My body betrayed me, trembling in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "I should go." "Yes," he said softly. "You should, but you won't." I hated that he was right. His gaze dropped to my hands, still clenched into fists. He reached out slowly, deliberately, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. My breath caught. "You're tired," he murmured. "You've been fighting alone for too long." "Don't." My voice cracked. "Don't pretend you care," he smiled faintly. "Who said I was pretending?" I stepped back, but his words followed. "Go home, Claire. Get some sleep. We'll talk again soon." He turned away, dismissing me like he already knew I'd obey. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he didn't scare me, but that would have been a lie. Because he did, and not just because of what he was capable of, because some buried, reckless part of me didn't want to leave. When I got home, Caleb was asleep, clutching his stuffed bear. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. It felt watched, owned. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my son, and whispered, "What have we done?" My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You left your purse at my house. Don't worry. I'll keep it safe until you come back." I hadn't brought a purse. That's when I realized. I hadn't just walked into Vincent DeLuca's world. I'd been invited, and I'd already accepted. You ever try to convince yourself something isn't happening while every part of you knows it already is? That's what the next few weeks felt like. A long, slow unraveling of the version of my life I'd been pretending to hold together. It started with the deliveries. Groceries on my doorstep. Nothing cheap, nothing requested. Gas cards in my mailbox. An envelope slipped under my door with rent money in it, and a note that just said, "Interest accumulates." I tried calling the police once. Hung up before the call went through. What was I supposed to say? "Hi, my son sold cookies to a man who might own half the city, and now he's paying my bills." I knew I should have been terrified. And I was. But underneath the fear was something worse. Relief. Because for the first time in years, things were easier. And that made me hate myself. It was a Thursday when the black car pulled up again. Same tinted windows. This time the back door opened. "Mr. DeLuca would like a word," the driver said. I should have slammed the door. Instead, I told my neighbor to keep an eye on Caleb and got in. The ride was silent except for the hum of the engine and the sound of my heartbeat. When we stopped, it wasn't at the mansion. It was somewhere quieter. A warehouse by the docks, lit by sunset. He was waiting inside, leaning against a desk, sleeves rolled up, black shirt open at the collar like last time. He looked too calm for someone whose presence rearranged every molecule of air around him. "Claire," he said, like he'd been saying my name for years. "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." I was. He smiled. "And yet here you are. Because you sent a car. You could have said no." "No one says no to you, do they?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I folded my arms. "Why am I here?" He nodded toward a chair. "Because I'm done talking through notes." I didn't sit, then talk. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, set one in front of me. "You're struggling. I help people who interest me." "Help," I repeated. "You're helping me." His gaze was steady. "Yes." "And what do you want in return?" A slow grin. "You." There it was again. That word that sounded more like a verdict than a desire. "I'm not for sale," I said quietly. He stepped closer. I didn't offer to buy you. Then what do you call this? Debt and opportunity. You can choose which one it becomes. Something in his tone shifted. Less predator, more confession. You remind me of someone, he said. Someone who once thought she could outrun me. What happened to her? She learned she didn't need to. He reached out then, fingertips brushing my wrist. Just that, but it felt like being seen for the first time in forever. And I hated how my body reacted. Every defense I'd built trembling like glass about to crack. I can't do this, I whispered. Do what? Pretend you're not dangerous. He chuckled softly. I never asked you to. He let me go then, and that somehow hurt worse. When I got home, Caleb was on the couch with his homework, face smeared with chocolate. Mom, the man from the fancy house came by. He gave me this. He held up a small wooden box. Inside, a tiny gold compass. My stomach dropped. What did he say? Just that I should always find my way home. That night, I locked every door and still didn't feel safe. I told myself I'd stay away. But 2 days later, I was back at that mansion, because he'd called and said Caleb's school was missing their payment for lunch, and somehow he knew. When I arrived, Caleb was already inside, laughing in the kitchen with one of the guards. Vincent stood by the counter, pouring juice like he'd done it 100 times. You shouldn't, I started. Relax, he interrupted. He's fine. Don't tell me to relax. You don't get to just show up in my son's life. He handed me a glass. You think I'd ever hurt him? I don't know what you'd do. His expression softened, and for a second, I saw something human break through. I wouldn't. I believed him, and that scared me more than if I hadn't. From that day, we started orbiting each other. He'd call to check on Caleb's grades, send someone to fix my car, show up uninvited but somehow always when I needed help most. I tried to stay angry, but anger doesn't survive long around kindness that feels like danger. One night, a storm rolled through the city. The power went out. I was sitting on the floor with Caleb, reading by candlelight, when someone knocked. It was him. Drenched, shirt clinging to his chest, eyes darker than the sky behind him. I need you to come with me, he said. What happened? Someone followed you home last night. My blood went cold. What? Don't ask questions now. Pack a bag. Minutes later, I was in his car again, Caleb half asleep in my arms. We drove for nearly an hour until we reached his mansion. He led us inside, past guards who nodded like they'd been expecting us. You'll stay here until I say otherwise. I hated the command in his tone, but I didn't argue. Fear has a way of rearranging your pride. He showed us to a guest suite, more like an apartment, with 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, and windows that overlooked the city lights. Caleb was asleep within minutes. I stood by the window. You could have just called the police. He poured himself a drink. You think the police scare the people who want you? Who does want me? He turned. Not you, me, your collateral. The word hit like ice. Why? Because I've been cleaning up things that don't like to stay buried. He didn't elaborate, just handed me a glass of water, his hand brushing mine. You'll be safe here, I promise. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. Then, soft footsteps. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, shirt undone, tie loosened, eyes unreadable. I didn't mean to wake you, he said. You didn't. He hesitated, then stepped closer. You think I enjoy this life? I think you've made peace with it. He gave a small, broken laugh. Peace isn't something men like me get. The air thickened. I could smell him. Wood smoke, rain, something expensive. He looked at me like he was trying to remember what softness felt like. Go to bed, Vincent. He lingered. You say my name like it means something. Maybe it does, I said, before I could stop myself. He left without another word, but I didn't sleep after that. Days blurred into a strange rhythm. Caleb loved the mansion, its endless rooms, the guards who taught him card tricks, the gardens that smelled like another world. He'd run to Vincent when he came home, holding up his drawings, calling him Mr. V. And Vincent, this man who made grown men shake, would kneel down, listen to every word, and pin Caleb's art to the fridge like it mattered. I'd catch him watching us sometimes. Not like a hunter anymore. Like a man standing outside a life he'd never known he wanted. But every time I felt something close to comfort, the shadow came back. His phone calls behind closed doors. The bruises I pretended not to see. The nights he didn't come home. Then one evening, while Caleb slept, I found a file left open on his desk. Photos. Of me, my apartment, my job, and one name scribbled at the top of the page. Ethan Moore, my ex-husband. The one who'd left when Caleb was 2. Vanished into the wind with a trail of debts and broken promises. I froze. When Vincent walked in, he saw the file in my hands. His expression didn't change, but the silence did. "What is this?" I demanded. He shut the folder slowly. "The man who's been using your name to cover his debts." I stared at him, dizzy. "You knew?" "I've known for months. That's why they came for you." "They? Who's they?" "The people he stole from." I wanted to scream. "And you didn't think to tell me?" I was handling it. Handling it? My voice shook. "You let me think I was safe while you were dragging me into your mess." He moved closer, eyes flashing. "My mess? I've been cleaning up yours. You think I brought you here for fun? I think you like owning people." He grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to stop my trembling. "If I wanted to own you, Claire, I wouldn't have to try this hard." The anger broke. What came next was quieter. "Why me?" I whispered. He hesitated. "Because you remind me what I could have been if I'd made different choices." Something in me cracked. I pulled away, breathing hard. "You don't get to make me your redemption story." He looked like he wanted to argue, then stopped himself. "You're right." He walked to the door, pausing in the doorway. "Get some rest. I'll fix this." The next morning, he was gone. The guards wouldn't say where. His phone went straight to voicemail. Hours later, one of them handed me another envelope. Inside, Vincent's compass. The same one he'd given Caleb. And a note, scrawled in his rushed handwriting. "If I don't come back, follow north. It'll lead you somewhere better." The world went cold. He'd gone to find my ex. Alone. And I realized the man I'd feared most was the only one who'd ever really protected us. That was the night I stopped pretending I didn't care if he lived or died. There's a sound a heart makes when it stops waiting for someone. It's not a crack. It's quieter than that, like a breath that gives up halfway. That's how the weeks after Vincent disappeared felt. He was gone, and the house, his house, our accidental sanctuary, became a museum of everything I couldn't touch. The guards stayed for a while, hovering like ghosts who didn't know who they were protecting anymore. Then one by one they left. All that was left was me, my son, and the echo of a man who had managed to rearrange the meaning of safety in my head. Caleb still asked about him every night. "When's Mr. V coming back?" I'd smile, tuck him in, and lie through my teeth. "Soon, baby. He's working." But in the dark, I sat by the window with the compass Vincent had left behind. The same one he'd once given Caleb, now returned to me like a message I couldn't read. "Follow north. It'll lead you somewhere better." Except I didn't know where north was anymore. 2 months passed before the first call came. A blocked number. "Claire," a voice said, low, urgent, rough. "He's alive." I dropped the phone. When I picked it up again, the line was dead. I spent 3 more days pretending I didn't hear it, didn't believe it, but pretending was a habit I was ready to break. So I packed a bag, kissed Caleb's forehead, and left him with my sister in the next town over. The address the voice had whispered into my voicemail led me to a small cabin on the outskirts of the city, tucked behind a forest that smelled like rain and regret. The man who opened the door wasn't the one I remembered. Vincent looked human, bruised, pale. His arm was in a sling and there was a scar tracing his jaw that hadn't been there before. But his eyes, those calm, unreadable eyes, were still him. He leaned against the doorframe, studying me like I was something fragile he didn't trust himself to hold. "I told you to follow north," he murmured. "I thought you were dead. You almost sound disappointed." "Don't do that," my voice broke. "Don't make this into a joke." He sighed, stepping back. "You might as well come in before you wake the woods." The cabin was small, barely enough for a bed, a table, a man trying to forget who he used to be. I wanted to scream at him, hit him, hold him. Instead, I just stood there, watching him pour a glass of water like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Where were you?" I asked. "Cleaning up the last of Ethan's debts." "You could have told me. You would have followed me. Maybe I should have." He looked up, meeting my eyes. "You think you would have survived what I walked into?" "I survived you." That got a small, tired smile. "Fair point." I sat across from him, fingers trembling around the compass in my palm. "You went after him. I found him. Is he gone?" he said quietly. "And so are the men he owed. No one's coming for you or the boy anymore." The way he said it, flat, final, told me I didn't want to know how he'd made that true. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he added. "Alive, unfinished." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was weighted, full of everything we hadn't said when we had the chance. "You shouldn't have done it," I whispered. "You shouldn't have risked your life for us." "I didn't do it for you." He paused, eyes softening. "I did it because I couldn't stand the idea of him still breathing while you were looking over your shoulder." Something inside me cracked open again. I stood, walked over, and pressed the compass into his good hand. "You keep it. You're the one who needs to find your way now." He looked at it for a long time before saying, "You're shaking." "I haven't stopped since you left." He reached up, slow enough to give me time to pull away. I didn't. His thumb brushed my cheek, and for the first time since the world broke, I let myself lean into someone. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For making you care about a man who can't promise you peace." "You already gave me peace," I said. "You just didn't notice." He laughed, quiet and disbelieving. "You still don't know what I am. I know enough. You buy cookies from children and rescue their mothers. That's who you are to me." For a moment he closed his eyes like the words hurt more than bullets. We stayed in that cabin for hours, not touching, just breathing in the same silence. When he finally spoke again, it wasn't to convince me to stay, it was to set me free. "You should go back," he said. "Live your life. Give that boy the world he deserves. And what about you? I'll build one of my own." "Alone?" He smiled faintly. "Some of us were born to keep the lights on for everyone else." I wanted to argue, but I didn't, because I understood now. Some people love you by stepping closer, others by stepping away. I left the cabin before sunrise. When I got back to the city, the mansion had been sold. The guards were gone. It was as if the world had quietly erased every trace of him, except one. A lawyer showed up at my door a week later. No greeting, no explanation, just a single envelope and a set of keys. Inside the envelope, a short note in his handwriting. For Caleb. "When he's ready to dream big, tell him I believed he could." The keys were to a small bakery in town, the same one I used to walk past on my way to work, where Caleb would press his nose to the window and say, "Mom, one day we'll have a place like that." I opened it again 2 months later, painted the walls yellow, put a small compass by the register. We called it North. Caleb ran the front with his messy hair and missing teeth, charming everyone who walked in. And me? I baked. I smiled, I lived, but every night, when the sign flipped to closed, I'd sit by the window with the lights off, listening to the city breathe, half expecting to hear a knock at the door. It came 1 year later, just 3 taps. Measured. Familiar. When I opened it, he stood there. Not the man from the mansion, not the shadow from my nightmares. Just Vincent. A little older, a little more tired, still dangerous, still beautiful. He didn't speak. Neither did I. Caleb spotted him from behind the counter and ran up. "Mr. V." Vincent smiled, kneeling down. "You've grown." "Mom says I talk too much now." "She's right." Caleb laughed. "You gonna stay this time?" Vincent looked up at me, waiting for permission. I nodded. He straightened, stepping closer. "I don't expect forgiveness." "There's nothing to forgive." "I disappeared. You survived." He looked around the bakery. The warmth, the light, the smell of cinnamon, and then at me. "You did this." "We did," I said softly. He touched the compass on the counter, tracing it like a relic. "You kept it." "I always do." For a moment, everything stilled. The noise of the world faded. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't tidy, but it was real. 2 people who'd crawled through fire, meeting in the ashes and deciding it was enough. He exhaled slowly. "You ever think about what could have been if I wasn't who I am?" I shook my head. "I think about what is. That's enough for me." He smiled, small and tired. "You always find a way to win the argument." I had a good teacher. We didn't kiss. There was no grand reunion, no violins, no fireworks, just a quiet understanding, a peace built from everything we'd lost. Caleb tugged on his sleeve. "Mom says you like cookies. You want some?" Vincent's eyes softened. "I'll buy them all." This time I laughed. "Not a chance. You're paying retail." He grinned, the same crooked grin that had started all of this, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid of the man behind it. Later that night, after Caleb had gone to bed and the bakery lights dimmed, Vincent and I sat across from each other. No games, no masks, just 2 survivors learning how to breathe again. He reached for my hand. "You still tremble." "Only when I remember how close I came to losing you." "Don't," he said softly. "I'm right here." I looked at him, really looked, and finally believed it. He wasn't my savior. I wasn't his redemption. We were what was left after the fire, and somehow that was enough. I leaned back, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old clock above the counter, the steady rhythm of life continuing. "You ever miss it?" I asked quietly. "The chaos. The man you used to be." He shook his head. "No." He didn't have a reason to come home. And that was the moment I knew, whatever came next, we'd survive it. Not because love had fixed us, but because it had found us. Maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting the fire, but learning how to live in the light it left behind. So here's my confession, the one story I swore I'd never tell. My son tried to sell cookies at the wrong door. The man behind it bought every box. And somewhere between danger and debt, he bought our freedom too. Not with power, not with money. With the kind of love that doesn't ask to be perfect, only real. If you've stayed with me through this, through every broken breath, every heartbeat that nearly didn't make it, then you already know how it ends. Not with fireworks or forever promises, just peace. And that's rarer than love. If you felt something, if you saw a piece of yourself in me, in him, in the mess we survived, then don't disappear when the story fades. There are more confessions, more hearts that broke and rebuilt themselves waiting for you. Subscribe. Stay. Listen to the next story that should have stayed buried but didn't. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to tell it out loud.